Yo, what's up? Now, today we are going to be talking about this particular pair right here, which is the ZiiGaat Oddessy 2 in collaboration between ZiiGaat and Hangout Audio, aka Critical. Now, even though I believe in this video, he did mention that this thing is not particularly his idea, but someone else within his entity group. This thing definitely has some essence of Crin in general, or more specifically, I would say Crinier, in both design as well as the tuning. Now, before I begin, just want to say thank you to Linsoul for sending these pair my way so that I could give you guys an honest review on the Oddessy 2. Now, if anybody is interested, please go down, links in the description below to this particular pair on Linsoul's website. Support the people who support me. Please don't copyright me, Crin. Anyways, this thing sits at $249 and it is a OnePlus 3BA config. Now, one very particular big and stark difference between this pair of ZiiGaat and other ZiiGaats is the fact that, this thing has a metal build, which I believe is going to be the first metal shell ZiiGaat in their entire lineup. I don't think I have seen before any other ZiiGaats with metal shells, so, this is the essence of Critical touching and collaborating with this IEM. Now, other than the tuning, which we'll talk about in a bit, what else you're getting with the Oddessy 2 is something simple, yet I feel like is very, very sufficient. Other than this unboxing experience that you are going to see in the B-roll. One thing that I like about is the accessories, in particular the case. It is a big ass case, it is hard. And one more thing is the fact that this thing has partitions so that for the metal shelled IEMs, you could prevent scratching, which I really like. Thank you, ZiiGaat, for actually thinking about this. I really appreciate you. A few more things that they give you is the fact that this thing has an interchangeable termination, 4.4 and 3.5. They also give you some phone tips, only one set as usual. And for some reason, they give you nozzle filters. I don't know why, but I am not going to touch that. But the most interesting thing of all, which surprisingly enough, I'm going to say is the default ear tip. Now, the default ear tips are made of a type of sticky silicone, which for me, I forgot the brand, but I used to have a particular tip that is so-called thermoplastic, where once you put it in your ear, it kind of molds into your ear canal, so it could give you a better fit. These things feel like that, but I doubt they are that. And for me, with a dry ear canal, this thing really works extremely well for me in terms of the fit department. Now, in terms of the build, like I said again, this thing is probably the first in ZiiGaat's whole lineup to have a metal shell, which is surprising. And one thing to note is that it has a shorter aluminum nozzle. So for people who want more deeper and bigger nozzles, please check your fit. But me personally, I feel like the fit is really not that big of an issue, mainly because, the sticky earbuds really helped a lot. Because I worn this literally last night, playing So Song for 4 hours, and, there's no fatigue, no nothing. And the only reason I can't play past 4 hours is because it is 4 a.m. in the morning and I need to sleep. So Song. But one more thing before we get into the tuning is the cable. The cable is this 4-core OFC plus I believe it's pure silver lids. And overall, one thing that I don't like is I don't know how many times in between I need to actually redo the cables just to show it on the arrow, because it has a weird plasticky thing where I believe even the ZiiGaat Lush is not this plasticky, which overall feels a little bit sticky. And one more particular thing that I've noticed right now is I don't know if this is intentional or not thought out, but as you can see right here, even though the two-pin termination is flush, this two-pin cable is elevated. The male jack is elevated for some reason. Not really sure if this is a design thing or something like that. Not for me, it's not really that big of an issue. For some people, this little bit of a height could also, have some issues in terms of how it fits on an ear. For me, it's totally not an issue. And with the fact that even though this thing has a metal shell, it does not slip out of my ear. It grips very well due to the ear tips, so I really like it. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's actually start talking about the sound. Now, in terms of how this thing sounds, let me give you a first impressions. I burnt this in for 50 hours. I think the best description for me is that for this price, for $249 US, This is probably the most safest but the most correct sounding IEM that you could find in this price category. In general, this thing is a balanced IEM, even though I know a lot of people are calling this something like a tilted neutral something. For me, this is balanced, not neutral. Neutral is more flatter than this. Overall, it has a very slight hint of warmth, I would say, as well as giving you a slight warm tinge of tonality. Other notable things that I could find during my first impressions is one very particular thing I think everybody needs to appreciate about this. For some reason, when I test IEMs, I definitely switch around a few things that I have, even though I'm limited with a few DAPs and DACs. One particular thing is that this ZiiGaat Oddessy 2 pairs well with whatever I throw at it. I paired it with my friend's RU6, I paired it with my Hibi, I paired it with my Kensei, and I don't know why, this thing just synergizes extremely well with whatever type of thing that you are trying to throw at it. So props to them, which I'll get into in a little bit later. Now, starting off with the bass, like I said, this is to me more balanced-ish type of bass, even though there is a very significant sub-bass elevation. I don't call it boost, I just call it elevation. You definitely get enough rumble and crunch, but it wouldn't be too much to the point where it is kind of like, fat-free-ish. But for a very good reason that I want to talk about the synergistic effects is the Kensei. Now, I don't own other i5 products, but the fact that this thing on X-Bass on and also on X-Bass, the synergistic effects is extremely well for some reason. I don't know why. The elevation of the sub-bass is extremely well articulated. Sometimes when you're opening stuff like these, all the effects, it'll get a little bit finicky, a little bit more fake, but it just works well with this pair of IEMs, which I don't understand. Even without X-Bass on, gives you good rumble, gives you good crunch, and punches you with, in my opinion, quite good responsiveness. Lower and mid-bass are also quite good in terms of its distinction from one another, but overall I feel like the mid-bass might be occasionally kind of overshadowed by the lower bass a little bit. But regardless of lower bass, mid-bass, sub-bass, one thing that I particularly like about this IEM is the fact that all of the notes, every single thing that you're hearing on the bass spectrum is extremely tactile. Like all of the tactile notes, all of those decays, all those extensions that you can hear really just gives you a lot of dimensionality and dynamics and musicality. So you don't really need to pay that much attention while this thing just serves you everything adequately. Not too much, adequately. Which overall I would say also comes with a caveat. Bass heads will probably feel like this thing needs more punch, which I personally can see why some people don't like the Odyssey 2. Me, I feel like it is just alright. Kicks overall also give you a good level of thumpiness, but in some particular areas, I don't know why, it sounds a little bit too one-dimensional. 808s overall, I would say, gives you good level of texture and also gives you a good discernible definition from everything else. Like when you are listening to 808s, usually it just drowns or just becomes the ambience of everything. No, this thing in particular, it definitely just wants you to know that 808 is just there. It is going to be a separate piece by itself in terms of the staging. In terms of note definition and resolution, this thing is definitely a little bit more pricey in terms of its definition, because this thing priced at $250, I feel like this level of definition could be at least $350, $400 US. It is that good in terms of its resolution on the low end. Everything can be discerned extremely well. Now going on to the mid, starting off with vocals as usual, this thing overall is perfectly aligned in terms of its positioning. Not recess, not forward, just enough. Vocals overall are quite exciting, it is quite engaging, but with the fact that it has a warm tinge to it, it is relaxed at the same time, so you won't feel like it is too much. Tonality, again, like I said, it is on the warmish side, but overall still gives you quite a realistic experience overall. Female vocals overall, I would say, sound better in this particular IEM because it gives you more weight and also gives you sort of a wispy texture. And in terms of male vocals, I would say it is slightly less in the note weight section, but overall, it sounds a little bit more aggressive. It sounds more forward. It sounds more assertive. And going on with instruments in the mids, I think the general consensus is, I'll just summarize everything with one particular word: realistic. I feel like every single thing that I heard using this Odyssey 2 is extremely realistic. But yeah, overall this thing just provides you a good level of musicality, without overshadowing its technical performance. Strings overall, I would say, provide you with a good level of immersion and authenticity, and with the fact that I played So-Song, y'all probably could see why I particularly say this. Keys overall give you a very good amount of overtones. Vocal ensembles, aka the backing vocals, might be a hit or miss in my personal opinion, because even though the fact that it fills up the ambience quite well, occasionally it might feel a little bit too much. And oh yeah, regarding what I said about synergy, the thing with this IEM is, I wrote a very weird statement. The best summary of this IEM in the midst is that it has ESS types of musicality and technicalities. Overall, everything sounds very lush, everything sounds very well polished. I don't know how to say this, it just sounds like an ESS thing. Going on to the upper mids treble, again, remember the keywords realistic. This thing sounds realistic with its timbre and everything else, but also one thing to take note that everything has a very slight smoothing so that you don't feel like it's going to be extremely, I would say, treble fatigue. Percussions, rides, hats, cymbals, all sounds extremely acoustic. It sounds quite live, but there is not an exerted amount of treble extension. It has a realistic amount of treble extension. And again, no signs of harshness, exaggeration in terms of things around this area. I personally feel like this is a very good pair to relax to. Nuances along the micro details, something like a triangle cling, something along the lines of cogword winding up. All of those things sounds extremely real and gives you a very good amount of staging, which we'll talk about right now. It's going on to the technicalities. First of all, let's quickly run through dynamics because I really want to talk about staging and imaging. Dynamics overall, definitely very well performing. I don't need to elaborate on that. Synergizes very well with whatever gear that you throw on it. And overall, like I said, it has that weird ESS type of musicality you find in the mids and up. So any type of thing that you throw at it definitely gives you a good level of presentation. And with that out of the way, let's actually talk about staging and imaging very tediously. Now, usually when we talk about staging, the thing that we pride most in Not Brand Acoustics, why am I promoting my brand right now? I don't know, this is my video, shut up. But yeah, anyways, staging is very important for me personally because I feel like that is the best way for you to be encompassed into whatever you are listening to. And this particular pair, even though it is not going to be the widest pair, definitely it's only $250 US, it does it in an extremely well way. It articulates itself very, very nice to the point where it's the first IEM where I noticed staging first on the bass region. This thing treats the bass region like the mids. I would personally say that in terms of IEMs in this price category, other than being wide, sometimes depth is not really that good. This thing really reaches extremely far. I can't really describe that well other than, listening to some Ryuichi Sakamoto, some Kodeka. You could definitely feel like there's some levels of dimensionality that you're not getting with other IEMs in this price point. And in terms of detail retrieval, I think this is, again, very well balanced in terms of how much detail there is without sacrificing musicality at all, because they focus a lot on the macro details and the staging, where micro details are not overshadowed, but they also give it just enough flair so that you don't feel like it's too boring. Now, in terms of the comparisons, a few things come into mind. With the same price category, the Kiwi Ear Septet, even though it is a multi-driver set, let's just talk about how it sounds in particular. That thing overall is more neutral, it is more harsh. I would say the bass line is definitely punching more in terms of that region. This thing overall, even though like I said it is quite tactile, it is a little bit on the softer side than, the Septet. Treble is also definitely more strong on the Septet. This thing overall is more smoothed out, but in terms of engagement, I will personally prefer this over the Septet because the Septet occasionally might sound a little bit too much. And recently I really just played a lot of Hollow Knight. Why did I say Hollow Knight? I recently played a lot of So-Song, and I feel like having this particular set while playing So-Song is phenomenal. And oh yeah, with the fact that, like I said, the Septet is more neutral, so that thing definitely kinda lags a little bit behind in terms of musicality. This thing wins in musicality, definitely. Now, another comparison which comes to mind is the ZiiGaat Lush. Now, the Lush overall, it's definitely an objective step down from the Odyssey 2, and I remember that thing being more warm. Overall, it has a stronger bass profile, but I personally think that if it's possible, please save a little bit more money because I think the ZiiGaat Lush is around 160 to 180. This thing is 249. Try to save a little bit more and get this because other than, like I said, overall it's more warm, definitely a step down in terms of tech. Musicality, if you heard before the Lush, definitely they have the same levels of musicality, but this thing just brings it up a very significant amount of dimensionality that you're not getting in the Lush. So not to say the Lush is bad, in that price category it really hits quite well. This thing overall is a step up, a direct upgrade from the ZiiGaat Lush, except that, expect less warmness, expect a little bit more of a refined bass, and yeah, that's it. So with everything out of the way, what are my final thoughts on the Odyssey 2? Like I said earlier in the video, this thing for this price point, for $249 is objectively the safest but the most correct sounding IEM that I can find. And with that being said, every single thing that I've tested on it so far, from hip hop to instrumentals to soul to funk to even silk song, everything sounds correct. Nothing is exceptionally special in particular. It is just done quite well. It kind of feels like this thing is trying to pursue a meta. What did I just say? Goddammit. But yeah, with everything said, for people who have a chance at Singapore, definitely go to Hangout.Audio to test this thing out. And for everybody else, if you are interested in a pair, again, thank you to Linsoul. Please head down to their links in the description to get a pair if you're interested. And with all that being said, thank you for watching. The sky's getting dark. Sorry for bad lighting recently because it's raining. Y'all know I usually just like the sunlight to hit me, but it's raining for so many weeks and lighting is just a pain in the ass to do. Thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video. Have a good day.